hope. So years ago, my son, Lucas, we were taking a walk and he said, "You know, Dad, this is when the church gets fun." Speaking of Advent, and before I could defensively interject and say, "Well, isn't it always fun?" he said, "Advent isn't a time for learning new things necessarily, but he said that it's more of a time of remembering, what we always know and going deeper with it and seeing if there's anything new in it for us." And I remember thinking, there's a pastor's kid if ever there was one, but made me happy to know that at least he was listening most of the time. But I always loved that, and I always thought, Advent is a time of discovering new gifts in the, if you will, old and tried and true classics, like hope, peace, joy, and love. And that's kind of where I'm going here at Buckingham. And we're gonna discover the classics, or rediscover them, and we're gonna start with hope. And classic Advent texts like Isaiah 64 and that beautiful, wonderful imagery of God as the potter, making and remaking us into who and what God intends for us to be as individuals, as a community of faith. Our hope is in this potter whose hands are deeply connected to us, pulling us back from despair and exile and pain and ruin, stretching us, reshaping us, perfecting us into the image of God, seen in us, even when we may not even see it in ourselves. I always like to think that hope may be defined as the vision that we don't see in the moment, but that we somehow know is still there. And I think that's the image of the God as the potter, reshaping and molding us into God's image, even when we don't necessarily see it in ourselves yet. Advent may be seen as a time to just rest in the potter's hands, wrapped in hope. Hope for the world, hope for peace on the streets of Israel and Palestine, hope in Ukraine and Russia, hope for our nation, in our homes and in our communities, hope for those whose lives are just torn apart by sickness in body, mind, and spirit, hope for the hopeless, the jobless, the visionless life, hope for brokenness in relationships, hope for the abused to be rescued, hope for the homeless to find shelter, hope for fill in the blank. This is the time that we together as a church, we may fill it with the light of Advent's hope.